Hello, everyone, and welcome back. It's the Full 40 with Chris and Rob, part of the Stay Tuned Network, brought to you by Nova Insider. We have a very special edition of the podcast today. I am going to do the spoiler now. At the back half of this podcast, we will be joined by the State of the Nova Nation pod, Emma Houghton and Patrick Zhang, who will be joining us, and we will be doing a Big East schedule pick'em challenge, the Full 40 versus San Pod. It's going to be great. So stay tuned until the back half of the pod for that. Now,
and at least it's going to be better than whatever the fuck we watched on Sunday. That's for sure.
It's a good segue, Rob. But before we do that, I gotta ask, what are you drinking?
I am drinking. I didn't make it out to the alcohol store to get anything new. So I'm back. I also didn't make it to the grocery store to get any ice. So I am back drinking Woodford Reserve and a splash of water. So Woodford Reserve, still waiting on that check. Send it over. What do you got?
It's the holiday season, and I am drinking, it's almost empty already.
I was going to say, it looked like there's nothing in there.
I am drinking hot chocolate with peppermint schnapps. So,
okay, all right. I feel like you're doing a lot better than me on the thematic drinks. I just seem to be stuck in a rut here.
Yeah. Back half of the pod, though, I will be switching to whiskey and may keep drinking that until I fall asleep because I'm still hungover from the Baylor game. And not because I was drinking during it, but just because it was so horrible. So I think we just have to dive right into that right now.
Do we really?
Unfortunately, we do. So
really sad.
We got our shit kicked in. 57-36, I think, is the final score, which is painful to say.
That wasn't a halftime? Oh, God.
Yeah. As my sister said once to me, she goes, "Oh, it looked like Villanova forgot."
Yes.
and that's actually a really good summary.
Yes.
Villanova forgot to play on this game. They forgot how to shoot the ball. They forgot how to, well, they defended very well, actually.
We did. Yeah.
One silver lining.
Absolutely.
But all that being said, this game was a shit show from the beginning.
Yes.
And so let's just give a little bit of compliment before we go into all of our problems, of which there are many. Let's give a little bit of a compliment to Baylor because I thought Baylor was fantastic this game. I did think that they got a little bit, even though I think they had more fouls on them than they did on us, I think that they still got a friendly whistle. I think that they were playing hyper physical basketball, but neither here nor there. That's not the refs weren't a deciding factor in this game or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that, but their defense was absolutely incredible. And I honestly cannot remember, and the score reflects it, I cannot remember in the Jay Wright era watching Villanova play a team that defended us so effectively and we were so lost in the game.
Yeah, it was terrible to watch. And I'm with you, hats off to Scott Drew. He absolutely had that team ready to go from the tip off, and they did not let up. We tried to make a couple comebacks. We tried to make a couple runs, missed a couple shots that maybe could have swung some of the momentum, but that Baylor team was there. They were ready to play the full 40 minutes. We were ready to play 0 minutes. It was an absolute mess. To answer your question, the only other time I can remember being similarly so frustrated was, I think, the first time we played UVA at UVA in, what was that? Must have been That
was a 2015, 2016 team.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get anything going. We were constantly like 12 points down and
absolutely flummoxed. But yeah, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't score 36 points bad. And we were still kind of were in that game at the end. And unfortunately, we were not in this. I was utterly frustrated, but I will say it was one of those games that you got midway through the second half and you just kind of said, well, fuck it. Like this is not happening. So it gave me a little bit of breathing room to kind of digest it before I threw a remote through the TV. But anyway, here we are. Luckily, the TV survived.
So I think that's enough complimenting Baylor.
Yeah. Fuck it.
Yeah. I think
Move
we
it
gotta look, I'm not gonna sit here and break down X's and O's. I want to talk about some thematic things. Where I'm going to start is that we cannot have a game in which like every player is that timid. The only players who weren't timid was like Colin. He was trying to create his own shot. He's not, that's not his game.
It's not his game.
But like Jermaine Samuels can't be like a fraidy cat in the lane. He can't be like absolutely just scared of his own shadow, seeing ghosts the entire time. Justin Moore has talked all preseason about being a killer. And where was that? I didn't see any of that yesterday. I mean, like, I would say he probably attempted the second most to Colin, which is kind of common in his role, but like he was timid. Brandon Slater, I know you got to talk about Slater.
Yeah.
But I thought he was like, I mean, what you can't look around and say any player was particularly good in this game, but like, like Jermaine Samuels and Brandon Slater have to be aggressive. That has to be their game. They have to slash. They have to get in there. They have to play physical. They have to play bully ball. They have to do all those things. And they got outmatched at every single level.
And especially guys that we're talking about, Colin aside, like he was just flummoxed. But what we saw from Jermaine, he has to be better for a fifth-year senior. He's been through all of this. He's seen literally everything thrown at him. He's seen the top defenses of the country come at him. He cannot be that confused when he gets in the lane. He's got to make better decisions. This was utterly frustrating to me. The Slater thing to me is huge. This is very much becoming a narrative. Put it in my narrative category. I almost brought it up last week, but I held off because I said, you know what? I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to see what happens this week. This one absolutely goes in that bucket. Brandon Slater got a lot of hype coming into this season. We did some of our own hyping of Brandon Slater. If you look at him physically, you say, hey, look, he looks ready to play. I think he probably has the most Shaq Fit man plays of the week this year. And he started off strong, beating up on some nobodies. And he actually had a decent game against UCLA too. But since then, he hasn't come to play against the top competition. If you look at his stat lines against our tough games recently, he hasn't been what you need him to be. And I'm not asking him to be the top player. I'm not expecting him to replace Colin. I'm expecting him to be the third scorer and somewhat reliable. I'm expecting him to be the change of pace guy when things aren't going right for Colin or when they're not going right for Justin. And unfortunately, he hasn't been able to do that. And this team falls down when he's not a regular contributor because we just run out of players who are contributing. And this is one of the other things I want to talk about. This lack of change of pace, this lack of being able to do anything differently within the team, I think is going to be a real detriment to us. We've rolled out the same offense now for 5 years, which like, hey, it was novel 5 years ago. It's not now. The personnel are different. I don't think they're, quite as effective as, obviously 3 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it may be. So I don't know. We can get into that now. We can get into that later. But yeah, Slater's a guy I'm dogging him a little bit at this point.
Yeah, look, I'm willing to write off Slater as a little bit of a slump, only because I liked how he came on with his aggressiveness at the end of last year. But it is concerning.
Last year, we're a third of the way through the season. That's ridiculous.
Hold on. Last year, and then in the beginning part of this season, I thought he had it. I think he's in a little bit of a slump right now. I think he'll work it out. I'm giving him a little bit. I'm not ready to put it to narrative status. I don't disagree with what you said, but I think that I'm not willing to put it in narrative status yet. I think that's a fair place to be. The reality of the situation is, your point is right. We need a guy who's going to change the pace. We need a guy who's going to bring a different look. The look of, shuttle it around the 3-point line and take the best shot you can doesn't work when we can't be effective at any level of the offense. There's no breaking anybody down, catching a piece of the paint, taking a jumper from the elbow, getting it down low, running an alley-oop play, setting picks to make a drive. There was none of that in the Baylor game. And even if when there was we missed every inside look that we possibly could. So
God,
it was horrible at every level. I mean, there's not a way you can come away from the offensive side of this game with any positives, but I'm just saying that I'm not 100% there on the Slater overhype thing, only because he's allowed to have a slump. And unfortunately, I think he's taking a slump at a bad time of the season.
Yeah.
We will see how he plays through the Big East play, which is now going to be a much more challenging test than what we originally thought it would be. Now, the Samuels thing, though, absolutely is now has to be like, it should have, I mean, it's been a narrative for him his entire career of just like absence and timidness and not willing to do it. And then he has games where it's like he attacks and it's just total different game. And where is it? Where is Jermaine Samuels? And also the other thing I'll say about Jermaine, I don't know like what's going on there, but like he used to play above the rim, and I haven't seen his above the rim play at all this year. And I don't know what that is or why that is. Is it just the teams that we're playing, whatever it may be? But I expect Jermaine above the rim. He needs to attack guys. Like one of my favorite highlights is that game against Creighton, where he just went straight up and just absolutely bodied some guy. Like against Creighton, that was like a couple years back. Like I expect that from Jermaine Samuels, and he's a fifth-year senior. There cannot be a timid game. Like it's okay if he shoots poorly, like he did against Syracuse. I'd be like, okay, I can accept that he shot poorly. Like you can argue that you shouldn't even accept that, but like I can accept that like sometimes guys miss, right? Like that happens. But you can't have a game where you're timid, where you only put up a couple shots. Like that's absolutely unacceptable. And he had plenty of opportunities. He was seeing ghosts the entire time. He was open under the basket, got a rebound, and didn't go up with it, where he pump faked and then like weakly passed out to somebody with no zip on the pass whatsoever. So they did not have enough time to get their feet set and shoot a jumper. Like he can't play that way. He's like playing like he's afraid of making a mistake. And I'm sorry, I could expect that of a freshman or a sophomore. A 50-year senior, absolutely no shot.
Yeah, no, totally. The hesitancy under the rim is crazy. I thought we had gotten that out of our system a few years ago, but somehow it seems to be a little bit back at this point. We just collectively look like Antonio Pena used to play under the rim, which is, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just going to turn the ball over and hope somebody else can deal with the outcome of it. So we definitely need to work that out of our system. And
then there was a period where I think in the beginning of the game where Jay was like, oh, let me try. And in the beginning of the second half too, where Jay was like, I'm going to try and work the offense and start it through Dixon. And I'm like, okay. but I like Eric as much as I like Eric, and I love the jump that he's made, but I don't understand that decision at all. Like, obviously you could argue, okay, they're just playing out on our 3-point guys. So the more we get it inside, you could collapse the defense down a little bit more. But I think we had to do that through other means. There was no back down the Baylor guys with, from the guard position into the post. So we weren't even, I know your point about like different looks. We didn't even execute our different looks where that's what I mean.
We're 2-1 note.
Yeah.
We're 1 note. It's like we run our offense. Like, again, this is the point I started to make earlier. And look, I'm not an X's and O guy. I'm not going to pretend to be, but I know the basics of like our offense. I've actually watched some videos on it. And like, look, it was a revolutionary thing. We rolled it out, 5-6 plus years ago, right? Like people know what we run at this point. And I get the impression that we come out, we roll out the same offense. Is it working? Great. Okay. Are we playing against inferior athletes? Great. We got this. Are we playing against guys who just aren't as good? Sure, we got this. But I don't know. Now, when we don't have necessarily superior athletes or just don't have superior talented basketball players, people know what we're running. And if they come out ready to play and we're not making the adjustments, we're not offering different looks, we're going to end up in a situation like this. We had 3 chances to win big games at the start of this year. And we went 0-3 on all those chances.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know.
I'm going to jump off of that point here. We talked about this on our Slack group, and I was like a little bit like here and there about like that point. Like I get your point about like run the same look, but there's something to be said for consistency of execution. And so, I think the personnel is a bigger issue, but I want to get into the personnel part of it. So that's kind of where I'm going to jump off of that with.
Yeah.
Look, your point is exactly right. We had 3 opportunities to pick up one marquee win to go into the conference schedule with, and we went 0 for 3.
Yeah.
To make matters worse, which is a topic narrative that we brought up on this podcast before. It's one thing if you did that and played your younger guys who can maybe give you a look, give you the opportunity to expand your bench, expand your depth, etc., to establish a baseline for them so that they could see, hey, this is what real basketball teams look like, and you're not it. Like, and like even 5-10 minutes of burn. We didn't have that. We don't get that benefit from doing that because we didn't do it. So we rolled out win or die strategy, right? Like, and we went 0 for 3. So I could have gone 0 for 3 coaching this team against those players. Look, obviously,
I get
my point. It's obviously a bit facetious, right?
Yeah.
But we needed to establish a bench. Jay said it from the beginning of the season. I need to this season's going to depend on how good our depth can be. Well, we're now a lot of games in, 10 games in, and there is no additional depth other than bringing back another 5th-year senior. And Brian Antoine did suit up yesterday, which that is a very positive.
That is actually very positive.
That is a very positive development. But Chris Archidiakono is not the answer. Like Jay's like running him out. Like, I don't know. I mean, did he play like 10 minutes in that game? 15 minutes?
Something like that. Whatever.
I mean, that's the response. That just can't be the response. That can't be it. There's nothing against Chris. He plays his heart out, plays hard.
Yeah.
He plays the game how Jay wants him to play the game. And for that, he gets minutes. I can expect that. But like, you can't tell me that like Longino and Patterson and Njoku couldn't have added a thing if they had gotten the experience early. Now you could argue game 2. Okay, game 2, that's fine, whatever. But by the Purdue game, you got to be playing some of these guys. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I go back to this depth thing. I go back to this thematic issue that we've been talking about on the podcast since the beginning of the season. And I just look at this and say, well, if you were going to not play the bench, at least pick up a win or 2 against this gauntlet. If you didn't do that, then I just wish if I could go in a time machine, I wish I could put these guys in for 5-10 minutes because I feel like that would help their development.
Yeah.
Now the other thing that keeps getting said, oh, Jay doesn't trust the guys, and Jay is not going to play the guys if he doesn't trust them. Alan Ray came on the podcast and he made that point beautifully. And I respect that point, and I completely understand that is what is happening behind the scenes. I get that. However, you can't tell me that Jay trusted Jermaine Samuels in his freshman year in the 2018 team when he had 6 of the best athletes that you've ever seen play in this program, and a team that absolutely blew out the doors off of everybody. And there was Jay early in the season giving Jermaine not significant, but decent experience minutes. And I'm not talking about Colin, because you could argue Colin from day one played Villanova basketball and got it and whatever. He was Archidiakono's younger brother he never had. And Demir Cosby-Roundtree provided a positional difference maker that we didn't have with Spellman. You needed to spell him in the whole 9 yards. I'm picking out and singling out Jermaine Samuels, who was very redundant on the 18 squad. And he did not, and he still played until he broke his hand. I believe it was his hand that he broke against DePaul, if I'm not mistaken, that year early on. He played and he looked bad. Like, just to be completely candid.
It was terrible.
He looked bad. I remember just being like, Jermaine, wow, this kid, I don't know. He'll get it together because Jay's a great coach. And obviously he ended up doing so to a degree, to a large degree. But he played significant freshman minutes on that 18 team. So I don't necessarily want to hear the trust argument to me, it's actually more an argument of trust on the starters. And I don't think Jay trusts the starters enough to put in a freshman with them to hide the deficiencies that come with putting a freshman on the floor.
Yeah, I think that's a fine point, and I think it's probably a fair point too. But kind of push comes to shove when if you're saying you don't trust your starting five and you don't trust the seniors on there, implicit in there is saying that they're not good enough. And then corollary, I will probably need something else or something different at some point in the season to go deep into March. Well, unfortunately, I'm not going to get something different or something additional by playing Chris Arcidiacono and playing Dada, because Dada and Chris Arch, call it what it is, they're game managers. They are basically brought in to continue, basically hold status quo, let the starting five get a lead, hold it. These guys won't screw it up. Give us a breather. They're not going to be the difference in March. The people who might be a difference in March are guys like Jordan Longino, guys like Trey Patterson, guys like Brian Antoine, ideally when he comes back from injury, just because they give you ideally something different that you can key off of and potentially run something different in your offense and just give the opponent's defense a little bit of a different look and something to deal with. Because like Chris Arch and Dada aren't doing that.
No.
And I'm just frustrated.
Look, I think that's a really well articulated point in that Chris Arcidiacono is not adding value beyond. He's just not losing value. He's like a raise the floor.
He's Trent Dilfer. He's Trent Dilfer on the 2000 Ravens.
Yeah, Jay has made the decision to raise the floor of this team, as opposed to work on improving or raising the ceiling on this team.
Yes.
And so that's it. That's what Jay's been doing through this rotation in this season so far. And so at this point, like I've heard like, oh, well, Jay's now got to figure out how to get these freshmen in. I'm not expecting Jay to get the freshmen in. Are you?
Absolutely not. No chance. Yeah. One of our friends like, oh, he's going to work the freshman in Big East. I'm like, you kidding me?
Yeah.
Have you watched how we managed? Yeah. Have you watched how we managed Big East play?
Creighton, who's like $1 million, Seton Hall, who's like $1 million. Marquette, who beat Illinois. Which team exactly in the Big East are you going to work them in against? Because I'm not seeing that. DePaul is 8-1 or 9-1 or whatever the hell it is. It'd be Louisville. So like who in the Big East are you working them against?
Yeah. At some point, some of Jay's philosophies are going to come into conflict with one another, and they're coming into conflict with one another right about now, because we always want to win the Big East. We always want to win every game of the preseason. We always want to, win the Big East tournament. Well, if we want to develop players that it's just not all going to mesh at this point. Yeah. Something's going to have to give. Now,
that being said, I don't want to overreact to one game.
I'm overreacting to 3 games.
I agree with you. I don't think we're going to be like a 36-point scoring team or whatever, or our offense has all of a sudden gone bad. We got beat by a team who played harder than us.
Very well coached team.
Very well coached, national champions. Like they're now the best team in the country via the AP and Ken Pom. They're an excellent squad, as we led off with. So I don't think this is not necessarily the end. I'm not sitting here panicking the end of the world. Like we're still going to win most of the games, probably are going to win the Big East. Like I'm not too worried about the long range outcome of like the Big East, but in terms of like what could have given you the opportunity in this part of the season to work in different players, to get different looks, to raise the ceiling on this team come March, I don't think we did that. I think we failed this test. A test that we did not fail though is defense. And so credit when credit's due, and this will come in handy. Our Ken Pom defense, I believe I looked after last night, jumped to like 22 because Baylor was one of the best offensive teams in the country and we held them to 57. Now there were some missed open looks, but there's always going to be some missed open looks. I thought our defense was tenacious. So they say defense travels even if your offense doesn't, right? And it did. like we did hold Baylor to 57, and there was definitely opportunities where that game could have gotten even blown wider open. And credit when credit's due to our guys, they locked in as hard as they could on the defensive end and gave them a hard time. So I will give credit when credit's due on the defensive effort. And I do think we did say early in the season, one of the narratives on this team could be defense. With a Ken Palm defense of better than 30, I do think at this point now you can say that concern is a little bit assuaged for the moment.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point. Yeah. If you would have told me before the game, hey, you hold Baylor to 57, I would have said, sign me up every single time.
Yeah, I would have said we won the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, yeah. So I don't know. I do want to hit on one more thing. So this came up. This came up on Twitter, and I have to hit this point. This scheduling thing that all of a sudden I'm now getting all these tweets at me, and I'm seeing on Twitter like fans going on rants that, oh, what was Jay thinking putting the schedule together? Like our guys' confidence is totally shot. They're like, it's just so bad. This is now we're going into Big East play and our guys are totally toast and they're mentally out of it and blah, blah, blah. No. That's absolute fucking bullshit. That's the worst point that I think I've ever heard a fan make. You can't, and first off, every single Villanova fan going into the season was like, yeah, what a great schedule. This is awesome, whatever. So you can't then look at the results and say, oh, no, I didn't mean that. What the hell was Jay thinking? That is Monday morning quarterbacking to like the nth degree that I've ever heard. That is crazy town. Like, no, I am glad we played Baylor, even if we got exposed. Like, it wasn't a great game. There's two things that you can do. You can write off an element of how bad it was, because there's an element of that's like a little bit nuts. But you also can look at and get a ton of game film as to how good Baylor was to figure out what we can do better. Same goes for Purdue, who was a totally different look and feel from Baylor. Same thing goes for UCLA, who was a totally different look and feel from the other two. So we got a lot of good looks against elite competition. That's game film that will be on tape for the rest of the season. Jay will this will benefit the team for having played those games.
I was going to say, I'll just round it out real quick and then we can move along. Come March, ideally, the rankings will shake out a little bit. People will move around, but Baylor, Purdue, and UCLA are likely going to stay right in the top 10. So knowing that we've already played 3 of the top 10 teams and what may end up being 3 of the top 5 teams in the country should give you a lot of insight. And even though you came away with a loss, like a little bit more confidence, knowing kind of what to expect going into those games. So it's ultimately going to pay dividends. You kind of made this point earlier. If we come out of that with 1 win, it's a totally different talk track, right? We didn't, obviously, but don't let 1 plus or minus kind of change things on that. The schedule was a good schedule. We didn't step up. Ideally, we step up the rest of the season.
So awards. There are none.
There are none.
We're literally not giving an award. I'm not giving it. You can't give a Shaq Fit Man Play of the Week.
No,
there was none.
No.
The
Alpha dog, absolutely not.
None.
Absolutely not.
No one gets the.
There were no alpha dogs on that floor.
Yes,
there were not.
I will say, since there has to be an alpha dog of the week, that we gave it to Daniels last week. So I'll let him retain his alpha dog status.
He can continue holding.
He can continue it because I did think he was one of the only players who played with any fucking sense of aggression in that game. Yeah, so I'll give him a little bit of credit there. And I appreciate that he's come back from being sick and actually contributed pretty well over the last couple of games. So totally. That's it. And then the pass the fucking ball award of the week can go to Gerald.
It's got to go to Gerald.
Gerald Wright.
I'm giving it to Gerald. I think this one's on him. I don't think he had this. I don't think he was prepared for what Scott Drew threw at him. As prepared as he was last March when we lost to Baylor was a phenomenal coaching job by Jay Wright. Pulled everything out of his ass and almost got us a win. This was just, he didn't have the team ready. That's on him.
Yeah, they weren't ready. They did not look ready for the speed and the quickness defensively that Baylor brought. Not at all. Yeah, not at all.
Woof.
All right. We got a couple minutes left to do we want to do a quick Creighton preview?
God, yeah, we have so much we wanted to cover, but we have so little time since we actually have to go to this other thing. So let's do a quick Creighton preview. We're playing Creighton this week. Hot or not, they're pretty hot. They're 8-1. They've got a nice win over BYU already. They're not quite ranked. Just on the outside of the rankings, not one of our 4 Big East teams in the top 25 this week. But ideally they will be soon. We're playing them in Nebraska, I think.
Yes.
It's a tough way to start Big East.
Omaha.
Now, what's interesting about this Creighton team, they lost a lot. They had a great team last year. They lost a lot of players. So it's a pretty new team. A couple of their best guys are new faces. Hawkins is actually a D2 transfer. He's their leading scorer. And then Ryan Nemhard is a freshman. So the two of them are probably the 2 names that you want to keep an eye on. And of course, keep an eye on Mr. Greg McDermott, longtime coach there, and has been a longtime Big East loyalist. So a little bit of a hat tip to him. How are you feeling about this one, Chris?
So it's interesting. I have oscillated back and forth. The game's away, which I don't love. I don't love away games versus Creighton. Creighton is so good in CenturyLink that I almost picked an L, but because of how Baylor went, I'm picking a win. I think Creighton is, unfortunately for them, getting Villanova with 4 days of preparation and really fucking heated off of a really bad performance in our first game of Big East Conference play. I think we're going to walk in and be on just an absolute intensity fire. And I think we're going to do a pretty good job on them. As far as Creighton teams go, they are 76th in KenPom defense, which is pretty good for them. Actually, they're never a good defensive team. They've always been. So defensive, things is that's actually one of their better features. And they're another team that McDermott has shooting the 3-ball well and all that. So I really they do have the opportunity to beat us. I still don't think it's going to happen. I think the more likely result is that we get a renewed sense of confidence coming out of these guys. Colin doesn't let us lose. Moore plays aggressively. These guys have a fire lit under their ass. And I think we win by 10. I'll go with 72-62.
Okay. All right. 72-62. That's that would be pretty nice in CenturyLink. I think it's going to be, I'm actually calling, and we'll get into this a little bit on our preview as well too. I'm thinking the Villanova swoon continues a little bit. And unfortunately, we pick up another loss in a row, which we were fortunate. We didn't drop too far down the rankings this week, ranked number 9. I think we pick up a close loss, call it 76-72 at CenturyLink, and we'll probably drop down the rankings. I'm guessing we maybe start the next week at maybe 15 or 16 or something like that. So a little bit of a tumble for the Cats in my mind. Hopefully that doesn't come to fruition, but I guess we shall see.
All right, then there we go. There you have it. Xavier, let's get that done real quick.
Xavier back in the rankings this year. Pretty exciting for Travis Steele and the boys out in Ohio, actually just coming off their classic rivalry win against Cincinnati. So
crosstown shootout, zip them up.
Crosstown shootout, yeah,
zip them up.
Literally with guns. A lot of the time it seems. Anyway, they're ranked number 22 in the AP this week, so kudos to them. Stark contrast to Creighton, who basically didn't return anybody. This Xavier team returns basically everybody else, basically everybody from their team last year, who, if you recall correctly, they were actually, talked about as kind of like an outside bubble team, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, they seem to have the ship back on. They seem to be going pretty well. Number of players that you want to keep an eye on here. Paul Scruggs is the one guy who I feel like he's Xavier's equivalent to like Ryan Arcidiacono, or more recently Colin Gillespie, where people are like, he seems like he's been around forever. I feel like we've been calling Paul Scruggs' name for a decade and a half, but he's still around. He's still playing 30 plus minutes a game. He's obviously one of the guys that you need to watch. Currently, the leading scorer on the team is Nate Johnson. Also been with the program for a few years. And then they have their actual leading scorer, Zach Fremantle. I believe he is kind of working his way back from injury at this point. He had surgery earlier this year and is coming back. So anyway, a lot of weapons on the Xavier team. Should be an interesting one. Back at home for the Cats, which is a plus. In my mind, hopefully they right that ship. I think they probably pick up the W, though, even though Xavier is going to give them a hard time.
I agree. Xavier will give them a hard time, and Xavier has quite the resume built up with wins against Ohio State and Cincinnati. So they're as you said, they're in the crosstown shootout, but they also have won all their Ohio games. But
sure,
the unfortunate thing for Creighton is that they are playing at the Finneran Pavilion. Not for Creighton, for Xavier. I meant to say Xavier. The unfortunate thing for Xavier is they are playing this game at Finneran Pavilion. If this game had been at Cintas Center, I could see this going a different way. Xavier's hot. That's a tough environment. But Creighton actually has to play 2 more games before they even get to us. They're playing, I believe, Wednesday, Saturday or something like that before they play us. I don't like them to be fully prepared. I like Villanova to be very prepared after playing on Friday versus Creighton, getting back home, taking a couple finals and getting prepared for the game. I like the fact that we're home. I think that it'll be helpful to have friendly confines. I think we shoot well. And I actually think this is going to be like I wouldn't be shocked to see this be like a 80-65 win. Like, I think it's going to be close early, but I think we're going to pull away.
Well, hopefully your big win prediction is better than my big win prediction against Baylor, which, that's a big miss. If you recall last podcast, I said there was a chance we blow out Baylor. That may be one of the worst calls I've made on this podcast, and I've made some pretty bad calls.
I had us at an 8-point win there, so I was also very wrong. I had their final score of 61, so they had 57, so it's pretty close there.
That's pretty
but
good.
I missed our score by like 33 points. So I missed our score by like a half of basketball.
It's phenomenal. Or in Villanova's case, a full game of basketball.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
All right.
Yikes,
Well,
yikes.
That wraps up this part of the podcast. After a short break, we will be back with the State of the Nova Nation podcast. Emma Houghton and Patrick Zhang, a joint podcast. We are doing the full 40 for Sanpod Challenge, or Sanpod versus the full 40 challenge, whatever you want to call it. Get excited. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute.